Campus violence continues to spread, with police making arrests at George Washington University here and also at University of Chicago, where they broke up an encampment after a week-long impasse. President Biden talked about the pro-Palestinian protests with CNN's Erin Burnett, his first interview with a serious journalist in months. And she pressed him on several issues, other issues, including the economy and rising prices.
It's also true right now, Mr. President, that voters by a wide margin trust Trump more on the economy. Are you worried that you're running out of time to turn that around?
We've already turned it around. Look at the Michigan survey. For 65% of American people think they're in good shape economically.
Guy Benson, Biden, in my view, hit the right notes in the Holocaust speech, but given the spread of violence and arrests and how much had gone on before he gave that speech, was it a little too late?
Yes, because he had already both sides this issue. When he was asked by a reporter who shouted a question at him about some of these horrible pro-Hamas hate rallies, he said, "Oh, I condemn it, but I also condemn the people who don't understand the plight of the Palestinians," paraphrasing there, which was an awful, awful answer they had given days prior. There's also reporting, Howie, as I'm sure you've seen, that he gave the Holocaust speech at the Holocaust Museum, and his team was trying to keep under wraps in the days leading up to that speech his decision to withhold military aid from the Israelis and then confirm that after the speech. So it didn't step on one element of his pandering before he pandered to the other side. So this has been an extremely unimpressive performance by this president, one that I think has shown a great deal of moral cowardice.
We'll cover that in the next segment, but there is such a thing as diplomacy behind the scenes, whether you want to go public with it or not. Lucy, the three cable news networks all broke away from Stormy Daniels' testimony, which is kind of at a sensitive point, to take the speech without the seamy details and side panels, because it would have just looked horrible. But it still made almost no news compared to the Trump trial.
Well, I think that a speech that is tied to sort of a remembrance event, it is not lascivious. It's not going to sort of drive ratings in the way that what position the president chose with Stormy Daniels will, as we just talked about in the last segment, fortunately or unfortunately. I think that one of the problems that we see the Biden administration facing is that they continue, I think, to be distracted by the protests that are happening on campus and some of the most extreme elements and figuring out where their base is in all of this. And I don't mean to get down to brass tacks about how this breaks down among voters, but look, it's an election year and that's pretty relevant. There was a poll last week that showed that really only about 11% of voters think that Biden is not progressive enough across a range of issues. And of course, this is one that's very front and center. And so I think that the part of the problem that we see Biden facing is he is trying to show that he's being all things to all people, that he is showing that he, is with the campus protesters, that he is, trying to meet what he thinks is his base where it is. But that, in fact, is not his base, right? Most of his base wants to see the president strike a moderate position on this issue, and that's what they did get in that speech.
Yeah, but he also, besides talking about the Holocaust, he talked about the campus protests. But in any event, Guy, I was glad to see Erin Burnett press Biden on the economy and other issues. He gave some of his standard answers. But should she have asked about, and I know you have a limited amount of time, you can only get so many things, I've been there, but the border or forgiving student debt or Hunter Biden's upcoming trial, which might have been more difficult subjects for the president?
Yeah, I would love to have heard questions on all three of those. I understand she only had so much time. He doesn't do this much, as you've addressed, which I think is not a great look for him. This was a sit down. And frankly, she pressed him on the economy. He gave standard answers. His standard answers are bad. For him to say we've already turned it around, that is not true in terms of the polling. He's 20 points underwater on the economy. He's trailing by double digits to Donald Trump on that question. And even David Axelrod, Obama's guru, has publicly complained and sort of griped, saying you've got to stop with the football spiking, the triumphalism on the economy. It's insulting to people because it's not how they're actually living. It's not how they're feeling. And yet he's kind of addicted to that talking point. He's paralyzed in it, and I guess he's going to try to roll with that into November. We'll see how that plays for him.
Yeah, Biden spends a lot of time talking about the laws he passed and how it's benefiting this or that community, which is perfectly legitimate, but it just doesn't make a lot of news. Lucy, this CNN interview was done on a Wednesday, which is the one day there's no Trump trial, to try to get more attention. first serious sit down, I should say, with a serious journalist in a long time. Jen Psaki, former press secretary on our MSNBC show, said it was more important for him to do Howard Stern and The View than hold a press conference. I don't have any problem with him doing these softer shows, but he hasn't had a press conference in like forever.
Yeah, I think that Biden's team, we've talked about this on the show before, Biden's team continues to think, I think, that they're so afraid of the criticism that he will get if they just let him loose, that they hold him really tight, right? So they don't put him out there, and it reinforces, by accident, it reinforces the narrative that he is not willing to do media, not able to do media, not up to it. And they have got to get over that, especially between now and November, because it's going to come back to get them. And they also have to get tighter on some of these talking points. The economy is a great example of that. Even if the economy were the best economy ever. Okay, keep going. Go ahead.
If it was the best economy ever, like, he still needs to campaign on other things. Look.
You have to feel people's pain.
He's welcome on the show. I hope this is a turning point, and he's going to do more interviews, but we shall see. Thanks so much, Lucy Caldwell. Guy Benson up next. Media mistakes in the Middle East, and a leak prompts both candidates to grapple with the Biden administration holding back weapons.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.